All right, guys, what's going on? We've got another episode of the Growth by Shawn podcast. So I have Kenneth Almond on today. Kenneth, how you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So as always, I will let everyone know how I got introduced to Kenneth because if I can network, so can you. So a couple episodes back, probably more than a couple, but I had Trey Bruffy on the podcast. And when I reached out to Trey, looking to network further, he had recommended that Kenneth hop on, just shot him a message, and here we are. So Kenneth is uh, his business is Foundry Training Nutrition online, and he's the co-host of the Parallel Physiques podcast. Um, so normally, just kind of how I start the podcast is just a little bit about you, maybe a little bit about how you got started in training or online
Sure.
training or personal train, kind of wherever you want to take it, and then where we are now, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah. Um, I started my own bodybuilding journey in 2013, and then that sort of transpired into realizing that I wasn't an athlete that was very genetically gifted. Um, so, in a lot of times, people to be able to scratch an itch, you may not be able to. I mean, I still compete. I'm going to compete probably this year potentially, but I know I'm not going to make it to the Olympia or anything like that, right? So you want to find other ways to scratch your itch for competitiveness. And what I've realized is um, I have a heart for people, and I have an ability to communicate fairly well, and I like working with people and watching them improve and reach their goals. So coaching was sort of the natural transition into what I wanted to do to satisfy my own competitive side when it comes to bodybuilding, but it's also my desire to just help people in general was a good fit. So I started kind of learning, and then once I started learning, I I realized how little I didn't know, and kind of like you, um, I just was networking, and I was trying to figure out like when I approach wanting to be good at something, what I really want to do is align myself with a person that has done it well or that I admire. So um, I was shopping for a bodybuilding coach, and but I was also trying to learn as much as I could about what it takes to be a good coach. And John Meadows was sort of the icon that I was looking at in terms of I don't necessarily want to be John to the popularity that he was. If I get there, that would be amazing. I just don't know that I have the charisma to do it. So Joe and I, John and I ended up having a conversation in 2020 right after his heart attack. I emailed him and I was like, "Hey, I've got some questions about my own business, starting my own business, and being a good coach. Would you have time to talk with me?" And I did it kind of strategically. I was like, "Well, I know he's laying in bed after his heart attack, and hopefully he'll respond." Sure enough, he responded within a couple of days, and we set up a call, and he answered all of my questions, and he was very informative in terms of how to navigate the industry, how to set yourself up for success, but also to be set apart. And at the end of the call, I was like, "Well, what do I owe you for your time?" He was like, "Do you drink protein?" I said, "Well, yeah." He's like, "Just buy protein on my website." And I was like, "Well, John, that's not acceptable for me. Like, why don't we seem to have hit it off? Like he and I just had a lot of connections from a personal perspective. And I was like, why don't you become my coach and I'll just pay you whatever your fee is up front, and I can pick your brain a little bit along the way too. And he was like, Yeah, he's like, I have 40 clients. I usually cap it at 40. I'll add you on. He even gave me a discounted price, which was really nice. And then from there, it just kind of stoked the passion for me to learn more and be better. But also, on top of that, I had a client come to me who I just was completely at a loss as to what to do. And that client, I when she came to me, I looked at it as, well, I'm the last resort that she has. And come to find out, she had a lot of functional health issues. And at the time, I was just a bodybuilding coach, like macro guy, throw some drugs at it kind of thing. Was very undereducated. And so with that particular client and John in particular too, I just started to educate myself. Uh, I worked with Sam Miller Science. He has an FNMS class that kind of gives you the basics and beyond with functional health. And then after I finished that, I kind of realized I think I need a little bit more. His course has since grown, has gotten much better. But then I basically went to John and was like, hey, John, like, would you mentor me on an in-depth level? And he's like, I don't have the time, Kenneth, but you can check out Austin Stout. And Austin and I spoke via email. And shortly thereafter, it was like we clicked too. So he became my mentor. John was my coach. We were really tackling a lot of like difficult cases from just a health perspective. I've kind of always been a fixer, so I don't get these really genetically freaky clients who are ready to hit the stage. I kind of have to fix everybody before they even get there, and that's how I've got started. And where I'm at now is he is still Austin is still my mentor. John passed away in 2021, and that was devastating. But now we're in 2023, and it's been just a tremendous amount of growth. And I've seen my business grow tremendously too. And I've got about 60 clients
Wow.
right now on the roster. And I don't know, is that enough? I feel like
Yeah,
I
no,
was just like
that's
rambling.
perfectly fine.
Is that
Yeah,
good?
no, that's kind
Okay,
of
good.
what happens, Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I never got to talk to John in a one-on-one setting, but just the personality that he had online. I mean, everyone loved him, so it's hard not to uh look up to someone like him. Um,
Yeah, he was one of the greatest people I've ever met.
yeah, I mean, I
100%.
wish I had gotten to meet someone like that, but I mean, that's how life works. So you do what
Right,
you can do, you
exactly.
move on. But
Yeah.
I would love to hear if you had any of the specifics, like one or two specifics that really helped elevate your business that John had taught you, um, that you could
Yeah.
share with us. Yeah.
Number one is he said, get educated. And
Hmm.
he gave me some resources initially, and it was mostly books. And unfortunately, it's been such a long time ago now, I can't remember the books that I
That's
wrote or
okay.
that I read. But so I started with that, and then he had a seminar. Like he would do seminars a lot,
Hmm.
and the seminars that he would do were educational in nature, and it was mostly like bodybuilding type stuff. It wasn't always functional health or anything because he wasn't really into that. But I went to a seminar here in Raleigh. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina,
Hmm.
and it just so happened Sam Miller was in the same audience. And so that's how I kind of made that connection. But then the other thing that he really did for me was just how to treat people.
Hmm.
Um, looking at your clients as every single one of them is important. It's not just one sole person that is going to propel your business. Like if I got the chance to coach Chris Bumstead,
Hmm.
it's not really gonna change much, really. I mean, I might get some notoriety because I might ruin his physique or something, but
Mm-hmm.
other than that, like, um, a person is not going to make your business. You make your business, and it's about how you operate in the standards that you uphold. And so he was very much sort of like a life coach in a way. There were times where, I was struggling as a coach. Well, the only person I had to really identify with the struggles that I have was John. And since then, things have transitioned, and I've got people in my life like Laura, who I do the podcast with, and Matt Cusano, who's a close friend of mine, and Trey and Austin and all these guys. So you end up having this network of individuals over time that helps you grow your business too, because they're doing things that are maybe better than what you're doing, or it's a different perspective than what you had prior to. And John encouraged that too,
Mm-hmm.
to build a network of individuals that you trust. And then just having, going back to the standards, it's like, even with athletes, if you have an athlete who is not necessarily grateful or shows very much gratitude, start to get away from those types of people and align yourself with the clients that are going to give you what you give out. And when that happens, your business exponentially grows too, because you have referrals, and those referrals are good referrals because they're good clients. So determining who your ideal client is, how does that operate in terms of the standards of individuals that you want to talk to or share your knowledge with, because you have people that just aren't going to jive with you.
Mm-hmm.
So like a guy who's going to go and do 3 grams of gear a week, he's probably not going to be my client, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be on the same page. And so really learning how to eloquently ask questions so that you can determine who your client is based on an intake call or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Um, to kind of like wrap all that together though, one of the questions I would want to ask, what is it about, because you had mentioned this when you were uh doing when you were just talking about like your introduction about yourself. What is it about watching and helping others like transform their life that makes you feel so good?
Well, I think it's mostly because I've had to go through a lot of things in my life that have required growth, right? And as you grow as an individual, if you care about other people, you want to see them grow and get better too. So I just think that's the natural progression. And for you to for a coach to be a coach, if it's not about the people, if it's not about the clients, and you have some other why, you probably shouldn't be a coach.
Mm,
And when I look at it as when I see somebody struggle through something that's difficult or whatever, and I'm walking with them through it to get through the end and them reach their goal, that's super satisfying to them. But it's also satisfying to me because I've walked with them through it and I've kind of shared the load. So being an empathetic person and having a lot of these people who are kind of broken come to me, and we kind of start putting the puzzle pieces together. It's it's a sense of completion to a degree, but it's also a sense of just uh, it's a sense of gratitude on my part too, because they
mm,
trusted me, right? And to have a level of trust with an individual for their health and their physique and their mind and all of the things. If you think about it, if you look at a nutrition coach or a health coach or bodybuilding coach, they're putting in parameters that are controlling like 80 or 90% of your life, right? It's your food, it's your sleep, it's your training. I mean, the bulk of what we're controlling is the bulk of someone's life. So to see success happen is also nice for me because I know I didn't mess it up,
Mm.
right? And so that's successful in my mind is for me personally, but to watch them succeed is also a sense of I'm successful because I'm an empathetic person and I just like to see people win. You
Mm.
know, there was one thing that John said all the time was, I just want to see all my friends do well. And what all of my clients end up being eventually are friends.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to see your clients do well, then man, you got your compass is kind of messed up, right?
Yeah. No, it's impactful because when you can start with someone and watch them completely change like who they are, and you know that you had a part in that, it's it's very meaningful because you know that you helped change this person's life, and not just change their life, but for the better, and that's what the
Yeah, and
important thing is.
I think that's the key is like I want people to not go through what I've had to go through.
Mm.
And um you know, I have a counselor and my counselor tells me I've got the life experience of like an 80-year-old man.
Mm.
I'm only 40.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you extrapolate that and you know, sometimes I get people in your age bracket, you had mentioned you're like 26 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the amount of wisdom that I have and the amount that I can impart on them, you know, there's two paths someone can take. The long hard road or maybe the road someone else has already traveled a little bit and you kind of know the map, right? I
Mm.
can at least say, "Hey, Shawn, like there's something down the road that you're going to have to pay attention to or it's going to completely cripple your life for a period of time."
Mm-hmm.
So, it's more of a the motivation is to not only help people, but keep people from harm that they shouldn't have to experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Do you have when you have clients that oftentimes become friends, um, and
Mhm.
these friends stay your clients, do you ever have an issue like setting boundaries or difficulty
Oh
with
yeah.
the
Oh,
relationship? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'll tell you this, Shawn. Like, I boundaries are an ever evolving thing. Um, I have, you know, early on, I went from like 5 clients part time to like 30 clients within a month.
Oh, wow.
And then those 30 clients, what I learned was they weren't all good fits. They weren't all good people. They were just, I was the new kid on the block. I had won an overall with a client at a bodybuilding show, and everybody wanted to work with me because they thought I had some sort of magical gift or skill or something like that. And that's why I went from 5 to 30 in such a quick fashion.
Mhm.
But early on, as I started sorting through what clients were good fits and what clients weren't good fits, I didn't really have boundaries,
Mhm.
like at all, because I thought, well, if I really want to grow this business as fast as I can, I need to accept everybody that wants to work with me. I need to communicate as quickly as possible on all different platforms. If you're DMing me on Instagram or if you're texting me or if you're emailing me, if you're calling me, I need to answer all that stuff. And I look up and it's like affecting my life. It's
Mhm.
affecting my sanity because I don't have any time to myself. Um, you know, I don't have any time for my loved ones. And
Mhm.
I started to realize, okay, now I've got to pull back. And the majority of my communication with my clients is through email now. And that was a learning
Mhm.
curve for me. Luckily, Austin was a person that kind of brought that to light. It was like, hey, like
Mm-hmm.
you're wearing yourself out. You need to do this. And then the other thing too is I have so those my client, the length of time that clients stay with me is usually about 2 years or more.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're a coach for that long with that person, you get to know them sort of organically anyway.
Yeah.
But the people that are my closest friends were the people that were clients of mine at the very beginning where I had no boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So those people still don't have boundaries sometimes, right? So I've got to say, hey, Jordan, Jordan's one of my closest friends, but she'll text me at, past business hours about a business thing. And I'm like, hey, let's just talk about this tomorrow. And so people usually understand what you're trying to do as long as you're communicating about what you're doing. If you just don't answer or if you're exhausted, I just think the level of communication and then holding that boundary is difficult because I'm also a fixer, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
somebody comes to me and they're in a panic or they're in an emotional state, like right now, as we're on this, I'm on my laptop and I've got my iMessages up,
Mm-hmm.
getting a little message here or there. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like I could address that, but I'm in this with you right now.
Mm-hmm.
And old Kenneth would be like, oh, let me pull up these iMessages and let me just quickly answer while I'm on this podcast with Shawn.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what I've had to do is just trial and error. And then I've also had to read a couple books about it. Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud is a great book um, about boundaries, just for everyone. In fact, the majority of my clients usually have to read it because the majority of my clients don't have boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of my clients have functional health issues that are tied to mental health issues, which are tied to not having boundaries. So, boundaries are just in place to protect yourself and your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And people look at boundaries in a negative way that, well, you're not you're not necessarily addressing someone in the time of their need, or um, it's sometimes it can have a negative connotation to it. And
Mm-hmm.
but boundaries are for the person that are setting them. It's not for everybody else, and they may misunderstand why you have a boundary. But it's important to keep those, and it's difficult as a coach, especially when you care about people. I'll truly say, like, I love every single one of my clients.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in love with them. I don't have like feelings of love, for them, but I love them as a person,
Mm-hmm.
and I look at them as a holistic person, and I'm like, okay, how can I meet them where they are, but also protect my mental health too?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. When you first got into setting boundaries for yourself and having a difficult conversation that may feel confrontational to someone else, why do you think it's so hard for us to have those difficult conversations of like a little bit of like friction?
Well, I think the majority of the reason why people don't want to enter into confrontation is because they're scared of what the other person's going to say. Or I find a lot of people have abandonment issues. So a lot of my clients are worried that I'm going to leave. I'm like, well, why am I going to leave?
Mm-hmm.
Why would I leave? Like, we're in this, we've made a commitment here and we're in this together. We're going to work it out. This is very, very few times that I've actually lost a client. But there's been times where I've had to let a client go because they don't have boundaries or they don't have the ability to execute what I'm asking them to do, and it's gotten to an unhealthy place. And so for me, confrontation isn't hard. I'm sort of wired that way. Like, you're going to know how I feel, you're going to know why I feel the way I do. And I would rather hit something head on than to circle around it and around it and around it and never get to a solution. And a lot of the people that are not confrontational, they're more apprehensive about confrontation because they don't know what the outcome is going to be. And unknown is a fixed thing in life. And I'm not really in a place where I'm worried about the unknown, but most people are. And it's not that I don't think about it. I do. It's just different aspects of life, right? But I think when you find people that struggle the most, it's because they've never practiced it. You know, you have to practice confrontation and communication. That's secondarily, they don't know how to communicate well or how to ask the questions or to frame the conversation to where it's productive. And number three, it's that, you know, I'm worried about what the other person thinks. And they're not worried about what they think or what they feel or what they need. And what I find is that's the natural human condition, is to walk through this world and think, well, what is everybody else going to think of me if I get this, or if I do this, or if I say this, or whatever. And what I try to like do with my clients is love them first where they are, right? So if you love and accept somebody first, then you can have a hard conversation because you got the street cred to do it, right? So I'm not going to just walk into your life, Shawn, and be like, hey, so I was thinking you're kind of a piece of shit. And these are the reasons why. And you're going to be like, you don't even know me. We've had a 30-minute conversation on my podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I've walked beside you and I've loved you well and I've cared for you well, then entering into a confrontational, and I'm using air quotes, for just a conversation that needs to happen because you care about that person, your ability to deliver that information is going to be a lot better. Their ability to take that information is going to be a lot better because they know that you have you have their best interest at heart. And that's really where I'm coming from a lot of the time with my clients is, okay, here's the boundary, right? The boundary is you can't text me after 8 o'clock at night. Well, why? What if I need you? Well, this becomes a codependent situation. And we don't want a codependent situation. I want to give you the tools so that you can handle and cope with certain things on your own as a whole person. If I'm not coaching that person with the long game in mind, then they're going to leave me and go to another coach and have poor habits with that coach, and it could compound on itself. So when I'm looking at somebody as an individual, I'm not thinking, okay, here's the macros, here's the protocols, here's the training. It's like, okay, what are the holes, not only in this person's physique, but what are the holes in this person's psychological makeup? And how can I contribute and help fill in some of the holes? I'm not going to fix everything. I'm not a therapist, but maybe that's something that I suggest. But if I walked into your room today and was like, hey, Shawn, you know what you really need? A therapist. You'd be like, hey, fuck you, dude. Like, I don't, we're not going to have this conversation. So it's really that basis of meeting someone where they are, loving them for who they are, and then orchestrating the ability to tell the truth in the time that you need to do it so that it's transformative. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Have you read the book How to Win and Influence People by Dale Carnegie?
I actually haven't.
It's everything
it's on
you're
my
saying
list.
is like is verbatim of what he basically talks about in the book.
Really?
It's basically a lot about what you had just said of if I just come at you with all this confrontation, like immediately, nothing's ever going to get done. But the way we word things and the way that we interact with people, and not like just trying to pressure them into doing something, but wanting like the best for both parties, is mostly about like what the book tries to like teach you. And that's like what I took most from like that quick clip of a conversation of what we just had, you know? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to make the most impact with somebody, you walk with them
yeah,
through life.
yeah.
And if you don't do that, then you're not going to get their attention.
Mm,
Because
yeah,
how many people do you have walking through life with you
yeah.
personally?
Not many.
Bingo.
Yeah.
That's my point. So we're all facing this whole life thing, and all of it's unknown. It's hard. It's fucking hard, right? And you might be lucky to get like one or two people in your life that pause a minute and they're not so self-focused. And they're like, let me go walk with Shawn. Let's just
Hmm.
see how this goes. And then you're going to listen to that person because, damn, they took time out of their day
Hmm.
to walk with you in a difficult period of time. And that's my job as a coach. So all 60 of my clients, it's hard to manage sometimes. They got to be strategic, but I want every one of them to feel like at any moment in time, if they need somebody to walk with them, I'm there.
Hmm. Now, you don't have to be specific, but were you always this empathetic towards others, or were there things that you had to go through in order to um, develop these characteristics about yourself and start to have more love for everyone else, as opposed to, not saying that you just had like you were some self-absorbed person, I don't know, you know, but
Yeah,
I'm just
right,
seeing if
right.
this was something that has always been instilled in you, or something that you had to make this change at some point.
Growing up, I was always a sensitive kid and an empathetic kid. You know, it was more with animals, right? Like I couldn't watch
Mm.
Old Yeller, or I couldn't drive down the road and see roadkill on the side of the road, or I would be, just devastated for the 30 minutes we were in the car.
Hmm.
Um, I wouldn't necessarily communicate that to anybody, but internally, I would just be like, I can't believe, that I just saw that or whatever. So I think there's a basis of being an empath that has to exist. And then unfortunately, I'd say within the last, well, I mean, in the last 40 years, I've been through a lot. And
Hmm.
a lot of it has taught me about the human condition and the fact that, like, we're all the same. It just depends on whether you want to admit it or not.
Hmm.
And we're all struggling with the same shit. We all put our pants on the same way. And life as a whole is very hard. And I would just say that it's it's designed that way. If it wasn't hard, then the high times wouldn't be so great,
Hmm.
right? So I've had low enough times to bring me to a reality of um, introspection that required me to grow by myself. And I'm exiting a season right now,
Hmm.
hopefully soon, of growth. And it's sitting in your shit and realizing, okay, what have done to contribute to the situation? What have other people done to contribute to the situation? How do I not enter into a situation like this again? And how can I prevent maybe some other things that I'm not paying attention to from happening?
Hmm.
And it's just being, I think what's really transpired is self awareness. As your self awareness grows, your awareness of the people around you grows. When my knowledge as a coach, as a functional health coach, has grown, I can kind of look at somebody and tell them whether I can tell you whether you have digestive issues or not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can start to pick apart, if I'm in a bodybuilding show, I can tell just by looking at someone's physique what's going on with them. So I think there's all kinds of things that if you're self-aware and you're learning and you're growing, it's going to make you a more empathetic person. It's going to make you a more aware person with someone else. It's going to make you more aware of potential scenarios that you could encounter. And it's also just going to make you more resilient. So, like, there's not much I'm scared of anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't live a life in fear, you get the most out of it.
Mm. Yeah, that's really true. There's there's a lot that we could take from everything, but like this whole
Just keep it
conversation
rolling.
as a
Whatever
whole.
you want to, whatever you want to, yeah, whatever you want to talk about, I'm game. So
Yeah. Well, what we had first thought we were going to talk about was how training or coaching a bodybuilding client versus a general population client is different, and we didn't talk about any of that, which is okay because this conversation blossomed into something that was way better. But we're kind of running out of
sure,
time
yeah,
here. So what I'm gonna do
yeah,
is I'm gonna um leave that topic for a future podcast for us together. And instead
sure.
for to kind of wrap things up for today, I'd love to just hear what you think. What do you think the online coaching space is going to look like in 5 to 10 years from now?
I hope drastically different.
Okay.
I hope there's going to be less. I hope there's going to be less of us
Mm-hmm.
because I find that in my community with the people that I trust, we do things a very different way.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mind people getting on board and doing it our quote unquote our way. It's actually just a healthier way. The more functional health minded coaches, I think, are going to be more successful because what you're seeing is as Western medicine loses people lose faith in Western medicine.
Mm-hmm.
You're having more and more people who don't trust doctors. So they're coming to other people that they're being referred to as quote unquote healers
Mm-hmm.
or coaches or whatever. And I think you're going to see a transition of if you're not working on functional health as an online coach, you're going to not have business.
Mm-hmm.
I also think the ones who are on the forefront of it now will be the experts later. And we're just now starting to see this ship turn,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just now getting popular to where people are talking about gut health and hormone health and all of these other things. But me and my colleagues have been talking about it for 4 years. So it's a space that I'm very comfortable in. And there's a lot of people that are just now becoming aware of it. And I think as things move forward in the industry, you're going to see the ones that do and the ones that don't. And the ones that do, they're going to have clients that thrive and are successful. The ones that don't, they may be successful for a minute, but they're not going to have any longevity. And then those clients that have been harmed are going to loop around to these functional health coaches to get fixed. So I really feel like I'm always going to have a job
Mm-hmm.
because we have a lot of shitty coaches out there doing some stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Because, and that unfortunately, that's the funnel, right? Because I'm the fixer, and but it's changing that mindset with the whole community. And as it changes, I think you're going to see I think you're going to see the industry step more towards um, healthcare to some degree.
Mm.
Um, and what you're really seeing in the Western medicine side of things is sick care.
Mm-hmm.
People are just trying to mitigate sickness or long-term hospital stays or stuff like that. We're in the prevention. We're in the prevention over
Hmm.
here. So I don't know if that makes sense,
Yeah.
but I feel like that's probably the natural progression of what's going to happen.
Do you think there will be come a time when nutrition coaches or online coaches, I'll say, just as like a broad spectrum of everyone, will integrate more with doctors and like healthcare, where perhaps something could
I
be
hope
like covered?
so.
Yeah.
I hope so because I think that's going to make it more available for people who can't afford out of pocket things.
Mm-hmm.
But you're gonna have to see a drastic shift in mindset for that Western medicine community,
Mm.
and that's a much bigger ship to navigate than just the fitness industry in itself, right? So we're starting to see some of the things that we talk about on a day-to-day basis bleeding into Western medicine. I mean, you can even see that with COVID,
Mm-hmm.
you know, get vaccinated, blah, blah, blah. And now it's transitioning to, well, you should go to the gym. You should get
Mm-hmm.
sunlight. You should get some sleep. You should
Mm-hmm.
lose weight. You should, those types of things where that's really a functional health perspective. And if they're smart and if they really want to cash in, and I think that's a stupid reason,
Mm-hmm.
um, they're going to have to change.
Mm.
If they don't change, our little movement will change things.
Yeah,
It might take longer than 5 years,
it will. Yeah.
but eventually, I think you and I in 10 years, we might be having a conversation that looks drastically different,
Mm-hmm.
and um, I might have a team of assistant coaches that work with me that do the same thing.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll see.
Yeah. Kenneth, I wish that we had more time because I really could have kept going here. Um,
Sure,
but to bring this all together, can we just, if you're all right with it, do you want to just let us know where we can find you or where we can apply to work with you, have a conversation with you, things like that?
for sure. Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Foundry Training Nutrition. I'm on Facebook. My email address is Kenneth at foundryphysiques.com. And you can reach out to me in any of those platforms. Typically, what I do is I have people fill out an intake form and then we have a phone conversation. The
Hmm.
phone is usually the best way for me to communicate initially, and then we'll decide whether we're a good fit. And if we're not, then you can go shopping. But at least follow my content and my podcast, and
Hmm.
um, I think you'll at least get some tidbits of information there too.
Yeah,
So
I listened to the first couple. They were good. They were good.
wait till you hear the one we just released.
Is it the one with
You
the
should,
psychedelics? That one? All right.
yeah,
Yeah,
we just
I
did it
haven't listened to
yesterday.
it yet. I listened to the first five of them now.
It's great, man. I think you'll love it. It's my favorite one so far.
All
So
right. I'll tune it. But thank you for today, Kenneth. All right.
thank you, man. Absolutely.
All right. Awesome.